News at 10. President Bola Tinubu has signed the Student Loans Bill into law. The bill, passed by the National Assembly and transmitted for the President's assent, is the Access to Higher Education Act and the 2024 Repeal and Re-Enactment Bill. This is after separate considerations by both the Senate and the House of Representatives Committee on Tertiary Institutions and TETFund. President Tinubu says with this new law, no Nigerian, regardless of their background, will be excluded from obtaining quality education. TVC News State House correspondent Femi Akonde reports.
President Bola Tinubu signs the much-anticipated Student Loan Bill. This is a fulfillment of a promise made in his Renewed Hope agenda. This will also bring Nigeria closer to achieving Goal 4 of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that seeks to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. President Bola Tinubu had on the 14th of March written to the National Assembly to repeal and reenact the Student Loan Bill. His desire was given quick consideration and approval. Now the buck stops on the table of the President Tinubu-led executive arm of government to begin the implementation of this policy.
We are determined to ensure education is given the proper attention necessary for the country, including skill development programs.
This new law signed by President Tinubu will establish a corporate body to receive, manage and invest funds to provide loans to Nigerians for higher education, vocational training and skills acquisition, and for related matters.
Those who are seeking skills, who are seeking to be skilled, to be empowered, to move on with their lives. So it's a very great day for the country.
Nigerian students that I represent, we are happy. We see Mr. President's commitment to the development of education. And today, the entire education system is happy.
There's a growing support for this new law resonating across the country, especially among youth who are the sole beneficiaries, as the student loan scheme will build an army of skilled workforce that can easily become self-employed and increase the country's productive base.
It's actually a welcome development, and when you look at the impact, especially to the Nigerian students, who are going to be the greatest beneficiary of this initiative.
Rightly shape the educational institution and the educational sector.
The federal government initially announced that the scheme would be launched in September last year, but this suffered several delays, leading to an indefinite postponement. The presidency said the delay was because of a directive from President Tinubu to expand the scheme to include loans for vocational skills. It is expected that this new law will significantly increase access to tertiary education and skills acquisition. Femi Akonde, TVC News, Abuja.
For more perspective on the Student Loan Law, the Special Advisor to the President on Media and Publicity, Ajuri Ngelale, joins me on the news at 10. Thank you for joining us at this time. Quite commendable that the President has now signed this bill into law. But tell us, what is the difference between the old and the new act?
Effectively, what His Excellency President Bola Tinubu has done is to ensure that this policy becomes far more inclusive than was originally envisaged within the National Assembly, by ensuring that we remove key critical encumbrances that we felt would get in the way of the widest array and largest number of Nigerian students, their ability to access these resources and obviously these loan facilities. Effectively, what we've done with this amendment under the leadership of Mr. President is to remove two major encumbrances. One was the threshold, an income threshold that was placed on potential beneficiaries that essentially said that any Nigerian young person who was coming coming from a family where the family income is less than 500,000 naira annually, not monthly, 500,000 naira annually, which breaks down to less than 45,000 naira per month, that effectively anyone above that threshold would not be able to access the student loan within the Nigerian Education Loan Fund. So that was removed, ensuring that we open the space so that different categories of Nigerian students and their families can benefit ultimately from the National Student Loan Program. Additionally, Mr. President removed the guarantor requirement, which essentially would have created a ton of red tape for our young people to run through in order to access these facilities. They would have had to bring 2 different guarantors with very specific features, some of which required finding a justice of the peace, a judicial officer, and civil servants that were in the service above a certain number of years. What Mr. President has done in consideration, in being compassionate to their situation, essentially removed that requirement so that we can also reduce the time frame with which our students are able to access these facilities. So opening it up to new income categories, but also ensuring that we reduce the bottlenecks in terms of the requirements. But also, I think what's important is that the President also added teeth to the Nigerian Education Loan Fund as an institution by providing a legal framework and a set of legal powers that would essentially empower the NEL Fund to be able to obtain and essentially move certain assets, movable and immovable assets, as fit in order to carry out its functions with respect to how it can sue and be sued in its own name with its new legal status that would also allow it to initiate certain recovery proceedings against any beneficiary that has violated the terms of the loan agreement. It also allows the NEL Fund to enter into loan agreements, contracts essentially with the beneficiary and the beneficiary institutions to ensure that there's accountability at the end of the process. The President also, in line with his commitment to federal character principle, added a very key justice and fairness stipulation that would ensure that within the financial year, every year, there will be a breakdown of ensuring that the fund is equitably dispersed to all states of the Federation across religion, region, gender, and tribal considerations within every calendar year. There are so many different elements as to what this new amended version have added to the process as against what was obtainable before. And I think the final thing I would mention on that is the President also created a very well-articulated governance structure that will ensure that the day-to-day management led by the Managing Director of the NEL Fund and, of course, a team of executive directors all appointed by the President would now be overseen by a board chairman and a board secretary and a board membership that would oversee that process, ensuring that we don't have whimsicality and any lack of supervision over how the fund is being dispersed. And that is in view of the fact that the President, within this amended bill, has also provided for a general reserve fund, which essentially is a revolving fund that will run in perpetuity, that's made up of 1% of all taxes, royalties, and levies that are accruable to the federal government of Nigeria through the Federal Inland Revenue Service. It will now be domiciled within this.
Yes, I hear you. And, very interestingly also, Nigerians definitely, would be able to get more about what the content of this act is and how they can, maximize its benefits. But let's talk about one of the clauses, which stipulates that applicants' request for the loans should be signed off by the heads of their institutions, whether it's the rector, the provost, or the vice chancellor. Don't you think this could constitute some level of bottlenecks in the implementation of this scheme?
No, we want to be very clear about the delineation between a bottleneck and an accountability mechanism. What we don't want is a situation in which you have funds being dispersed by the NEL Fund into these institutions, paying for tuition, and then you're separately, by the way, in view of the President's amendment, essentially what we've also provided for, unlike the first iteration of the Act, is now a provision of essentially allowance for the beneficiary student that will allow that student to pay for their hostel, living expenses, etc., in addition to the tuition that's being paid directly to the institution. So we need accountability. We need to ensure that our students are not accessing facilities that ultimately are not going toward a process in which they will be graduating from that institution. We want to ensure that we are giving these funds, which are obviously very precious, to students who we can be tracking, through which we can be tracking their development through the institution to ensure that they're on pace for graduation and ultimately in a position with their certificates at the end of the process to pay back. But we also want to emphasize that the President has, through this amendment, also opened up the space, not just for all income thresholds and by removing the guarantor requirement, but also by ensuring that the fund, as he stated today, is also going to be tailored toward those who want to engage themselves in blue-collar work, manufacturing, plumbing, carpentry, and hands-on skills and training through vocational technical education centers and skills acquisition centers. We want to ensure that we have this student loan program covering Nigerian youths who don't want to sit for 4 or 6 or 8 years through a master's, PhD, or bachelor's degree program in a traditional, program with medicine, law, et cetera, et cetera. We want to cater to the white collar, but we also want to cater to the blue collar, and that is what the President has envisaged. And I think on the issue of accountability, I want to emphasize this. The President has also ensured that at the end of this process, we have said clearly within this amended act that the beneficiaries have up to 2 years following the conclusion of their participation in the National Youth Service Scheme to be able to pay back. But we have also said that if within those 2 years, again, this is the compassion of Mr. President, he's saying that if within those 2 years, by the time it has elapsed, you have not been able to find employment, whether through self-employment and entrepreneurship or through formal engagement with an existing institution or business, then you can obtain a sworn affidavit that essentially states that you do not have access to an income of any sort, and based on that, we can now extend the time frame within which the NEL Fund would initiate enforcement proceedings against the beneficiary for the recovery of the loan. But then we also, finally on that, we also added a stipulation that says anybody found to be engaging in perjury, right, which is lying under oath, lying through the sworn affidavit that they don't have resources or income when they do, if we find such an individual or such an instance, that individual will be found liable of a felony, which is obviously going to carry a prison term of a minimum of 3 years. So we have worked through this, and we have also added a technological backbone to ensure that we incorporate the NIN number and the BVN number, which was not obtainable in the first iteration of the Act, so that there's a technological backbone to ensure transparency and accountability in the implementation of this program. There's really a lot that Mr. President has done with this amendment bill.
So hopefully all of these help to, monitor implementation of this scheme, the Student Loan Law. Thank you very much. During Gilali, a special advisor to the President on Media and Publicity. Thank you for joining us on TVC News at 10.